6 years since the Tiananmen Square crackdown, a moment that remains deeply controversial and sensitive. Beijing has strongly criticised US Secretary of State Marco Rubio for saying that the world will never forget the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown, calling his remarks an attack on China. Chinese troops and tanks forcibly cleared peaceful protesters from Beijing Square on June the 4th, 1989, after weeks-long demonstrations demanding greater political freedoms. The exact death toll remains unknown, with estimates ranging from hundreds to over 1,000. According to analysts, since then, China's communist leadership has worked to erase any public mention of the crackdown. Marco Rubio said that the world will always remember the events of June the 4th, despite China's efforts to hide the facts. He paid tribute to those who lost their lives fighting for their freedoms and to those still seeking justice. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian fired back, accusing the US of distorting history, attacking China's political system and interfering in its internal affairs. Lin said China strongly rejects these claims and has lodged a formal protest. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te echoed Rubio's remarks, saying authoritarian governments often choose to ignore history, while democratic societies choose to remember the truth and honour those who fought for human rights. Well, joining us to discuss these comments from Lai, Rubio and their ramifications is Andrew K.P. Leung, a China strategist, who is joining us from Hong Kong. Andrew, thank you as always for being here with us. We've heard the comments there from Marco Rubio. We've had a response from China. This, of course, in the midst of ongoing strained relations between the two countries. What is the significance in China of Marco Rubio's statements today? Well, while we wait for Andrew to reconnect there, this, of course, a moment that Lai Ching-te has spoken about, celebrating the 36th anniversary of an event which took place in China. Comments as well from Marco Rubio, looking into authoritarian rule and speaking about freedom to expression and talking about people who are still campaigning over this issue. A moment in history that the US are wanting the world to remember, along with Taiwan, China responding as well to these comments. We are now once again joined by Andrew K.P. Leung. Andrew, thank you very much for rejoining us. What I was saying to you before we had a brief interruption was the response from Marco Rubio have been the comments have been met with a response from China in a world where China and US relations are already strained. How significant are Marco Rubio's comments?
Hello, are you asking me?
Yes, Andrew, we're speaking to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Well, I think that the world is still looking at what happened to China 36 years ago, and a lot of water has passed under the bridge. I mean, China is no longer the China at the time when the whole world was focusing on the person standing in front of the tank on Tiananmen Square. China has since grown to be the world's second largest economy, and is now developing, self-developing its technology, cutting-edge technology that defines the fifth and the sixth, the fourth and the fifth industrial revolution, like DeepSeek, and creating and managing and operating its own independently operated space station. So I think that China has got a lot of progress, both economically, technologically, scientifically, under the tutelage of the Chinese Communist Party. And in fact, that sad chapter on Tiananmen Square was long forgotten by a lot of people. Although, of course, that had been a great deal of research. And for the United States and Taiwan, just to lifting up this page again, speaks to a kind of desire to continue to blacken China and to continue to paint the picture of China as if it stood still in the situation 36 years ago.
Yes, Andrew, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian has accused the US of distorting history. These events, of course, have been documented. You mentioned they're turning a page and lifting a page on a historical incident. But I'm interested in your response to what the Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said there. What is the US distorting?
Well, I think that as I said, China has come a long way, both scientifically and economically. And as far as civil society is concerned, China's system was very, very different from the West. Whereas in the West, civil societies tend to work against the government. But then in China, civil societies work together with the government. For example, on poverty relief, on climate change, on the ecology. A lot of civil society activists in China, they're doing great work. And some of them cooperate with international organizations. So I think that this rhetoric about Tiananmen Square is really doesn't get the whole picture and paints a misleading picture of what China is now.
Yes, we know that Lai Ching-te has echoed the remarks of Marco Rubio, but I'm interested in his comments saying that authoritarian governments often choose to ignore history given the ongoing China-Taiwan tensions. How do you think this will be perceived by the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, if you look at the China's progress under the one-party system, definitely China's progress has been much more spectacular compared with other systems. Not that that system can be replicated to the rest of the world. In fact, it is unique because China's history is unique, its population is unique, its geography and its ethnicity, rich in ethnicity. There are something like 58 different ethnicities. Even though the largest ethnic group is the Han Chinese, but most of them, in fact, the vast majority of all these ethnic groups live in great harmony, with the exception of certain ethnic groups. But then even in Tibet and Xinjiang, situation is now returned to normal. And in fact, China is so confident that it's now issuing visa-free treatment to dozens of Western countries. And the idea is that, well, if you think China's backward, if you think China's authoritarian, come and have a look. And I think that China has now got the confidence to showcase the world what China is all about. It's not a replica of the West, but it is a unique country with a unique history, with a unique mixture of ethnic groups, and with its unique trajectory. And there is no one size fits all, as if the only system that works for the entire world is the Western system. This is by no means so. Not that China's model, as I said, could be replicated to the rest of the world, but China's is finding its own path towards its own trajectory.
Yes, Andrew, we're very short on time, but one final question. Given that several parts of the world are bringing this situation and this incident in history back to light, do you think more should be done, and do you think China should look to investigate a final death toll, with the numbers ranging from hundreds to potentially more than 1,000?
No, I think that China is opening up. I think that this is unfortunate that with all this China scare rhetoric, especially coming from the United States, it doesn't help the world to understand China. But I think that if you look at, for example, Europe, Spain, for example, is now treating China quite differently from other countries. A number of countries are still mired by this twisted rhetoric as if history stood still on China. But then a lot of things are happening. Yeah, okay, China is now facing a lot of challenges, both economically and demographics. But then China's society is very, very different from what it was, especially 36 years ago. And the modern China is being now showcased to the rest of the world through visa-free access, through opening up the economy, I think that that's what China's trying to do, and that's to rest unchanged and unmoved on this incident 36 years ago. It's not very helpful to the rest of the world in understanding what China now is all about.
Andrew KP Leung, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing some further